Welcome everyone. It's Ronald Ingram here, your Rebel Banker, broadcasting from the high desert, Nevada, overlooking the Luxor Pyramid. A lot of big things going on today in the world and with Spock. Spock is a meme plus utility coin with incredible utility that is becoming more and more abundantly clear every day. So with recent comment from Brian Armstrong and others about the growth of machine-to-machine commerce, possibly eclipsing human, sorry about the background noise, possibly eclipsing human trade and commerce. It is very exciting times. So I would like to talk about a few things tonight. The conference that we've got coming up, the corporate website with X402 capability built into the infrastructure. So I've got a number of websites out, but I've shared recently, but that's not the corporate site. The corporate site is yet to come. The Spock site is up. That's really clean, lean, mean, clean, tight, focused on Spock the token and how to get on that. And that's really, the white paper is there and the pretty detailed explanation of what Spock coin is about. Basically, it's the fuel for the singularity economy, if you will. And I'll explain a little bit more about that. But it is also the fuel for agentic commerce, which is something that is, as I said, becoming more and more abundantly obvious and to be a huge, unbelievable sea change in the way that commerce occurs worldwide. Brian Armstrong also talked recently about a marketplace for machine-to-machine commerce, provisioning wallets for machine-to-machine commerce. All of these things are enabled by our token, which is the first MBC20 protocol token, the first with X402 built in, and some other things that are built in that I haven't even talked about yet, but I've been working on feverishly over the last little while. And some exciting announcements coming about that. But suffice to say, Spock is more perfectly positioned. I never knew that I'm a futurist, but sometimes I surprise myself in how, I guess I'm getting better at it. And we seem to be at exactly the right place at the right time, a little bit early, which is what I like to be, not 50 years early or 20 years early, but a few days or weeks. That's always good. So we are really early still with Spock and with these changes, but these are tidal changes that are happening. These aren't small incremental changes. These are really significant changes. And why? Because machines propagate so quickly. There will be, even instantiated in human form, there's talk that robots instantiated in physical form, so real robots, will be more common than automobiles. And so Tesla has shifted their whole manufacturing focus from automobiles to actual bipedal instantiated artificial intelligence, AKA robots. So, and that's just the physical form, which is slow to reproduce. In digital form, it can just be everywhere all at once. And that's what is so exciting, because we've designed the Spock token to meet all the parameters that are anticipated that a machine would want without any BS, no fluff, and strictly structured and strict rules in place, limited supply, and a fair market token, fair launch token. All of these things. And that's part of the reason that I also use Pump.fun. I'm not averse to the fact that it's such a wild playground. In fact, a lot of the greatest innovations that ever have, in fact, that's always the way with great innovations, is they always emerge from the periphery, from the perimeter into the mainstream. We always talk about the VisiCalc moment, when PCs went from gaming and multiplayer games and risque entertainment to, with VisiCalc, the first spreadsheet being adopted globally by every business in the world, right? Now that happened over many years. The types of innovation that we're seeing as we enter the singularity, where things happen faster and faster. We used to be limited by Moore's law, which would double computer speed doubling at a rapid pace. And now we're moving even more quickly. We're not even bound by Moore's law anymore. And plus we have machines that are the next generation of machines with quantum capabilities and so forth. It is the singularity, which is by definition, mind-boggling. It's when the pace of change accelerates so rapidly, it boggles the human mind. And AI starts to eclipse the collective intelligence of humanity. That's one of the other definitions of the singularity that Musk says we're in. And most futurists agree that is now only a couple of years away. And as I said, Musk thinks we're in it right now and feels like it, but Musk is often early. And but more conservative futurists would say that it's 2 years out. I tend to agree with Musk. He tends to have a pretty good vision. The timing is not always on with the timing exactly, but his timing is always achievable. And there are always things that are outside of our control that sometimes slow things down. I'm guilty of the same things sometimes. And when I say I can deliver something in a week, sometimes it takes 2 weeks because of external factors beyond my control. Hardware, you plan for contingencies, but even contingencies fail sometimes. So there are macroeconomic events and political events, geopolitical events, solar Carrington event when solar flares blew out all the electronic around the world. When was that? I think it was late 1800s. Fortunately, before we were 1896, before the world had been completely electronified. So that's where we're at. So this corporate website is more than just a corporate website. A lot of the tech is baked in. Plus, it'll tell the story. So it'll be another way to get the message out. I'm also going to do something real that I've been seeing that there is still a real challenge for newbies and normies. They get it. They love it when they get a wallet going and funded and get their Spock. And for a limited time now, I'm friends and family and people that reach out to me, any connection whatsoever, can let me know that they want some. I'll give them 5,000 Spock, which our goal that this is aspirational, not forward-looking, but our goal is to have Spock at $1, basically parity with US dollar. And I've built companies that have scaled to bigger numbers than that. So this is a token. This is a utility token. Now, companies that are built around this is actually kind of the keystone or foundation stone, cornerstone of an edifice that I'm building that I've mapped out and the community shows all the different parts. But the key parts being the Ingram Evaluation Matrix, which that's one of the things that Spock is used. You get tokens, you get a Spock banks that have a need for explainable decision making. They get tokens just like you get tokens for an API, and you utilize tokens to access an API, except these tokens are fungible and can be exchanged. Unused tokens can be exchanged for other tokens, for Bitcoin, for fiat, for USDC. And so they're completely fungible. And so that gives them additional utility, right? They can be used for value transfer anywhere in the world for almost nothing. That's something that actually just out of the box is pretty mind-blowing for parents that have kids in overseas or something like that. They say, what, you mean my kid has Spock? We can do a Spock transfer and they can convert that into currency on the other side and pretty instantly versus queuing up for wires. Oh my goodness, wires and all this talk about the basis for wire payments globally is for international wire payments is this organization called SWIFT, which is super efficient, just like all European bureaucracy, and it's managed by a committee. Always great. And committees, that's the way you want to run a company, right? You want to have 60 people from dozens of different countries to be involved in every decision, right? Really helps you get a really good product out to market. So Swift, there's a lot of buzz about Swift. I think a lot of marketing about Swift trying to upgrade their rails. They are way late to this game. And I think the suffering that has been inflicted on entrepreneurs who depend sometimes on, and anybody really, not just entrepreneurs, but imagine for small transactions, actually the smaller transactions are even worse. The fees proportionate to the exchange or to the value transfer is egregious. And these are people that don't have, yes, entrepreneurs are creating jobs, have big dreams and aspirations that can change the world. But other people, it's about food on the table, right? That's more important. That's more, can be life and death, right? And to depend on the current, especially MoneyGram and Telegram, I don't like to, or not Telegram, Western Union, which is an ancient company, goes back to late 1800s. I think they were probably one of the only companies around that was impacted by the Carrington event that I mentioned. And I could fried all the wires, literally, like the electrical wires and telegraph wire that wires used to wire payment. Well, before preceded what became the infrastructure for wire payments, which we still have today. So anyway, that infrastructure is tired and ready to be retired. And this and newbies and normies just in the basic utility of value transfer that can be accomplished with Spock and others, right? So Spock isn't super differentiated in that at this point. But the things that it is really differentiated in are the explainable decisions, high stakes decisions, which in banking and many other fields are incredibly important. And I'm going to repeat it for those who've heard this before, probably haven't heard it enough, because the market cap of Spock would be over $1 million if the word was out yet. But if you're hearing this, you're very early. And so congratulations. But these tokens, so Spock is used, banks will utilize these, and I've got 62 bankers that are in a queue, still 62. I know I said 62 2 days ago, and I haven't gotten back to any of them. They're still in the queue. But I have 3 days ago, I made quite a bit of progress and finalizing what agreements would, some of the key elements and agreements that banks expect to be there, which had to do around the security and compliance and all those things, which I'm very familiar with, having been in banking for a couple of decades. I always say 20 years. So I'm a biohacker, so it's reversed my age about, not, you're supposed to say reversed your age, right? But what else do you say? How else do you say it? The fact is my biological age was 20 years, 25 years more than it is today, right? So however you want to explain that math, it is a 25-year difference. And I'll go through that's why I always drop a biohacking tip. I've got a whole book coming out, Genius, the book Live Long and Prosper. That is a little bit overdue, but it's available. I guess the urgency, I do have it available for free on Substack for now. So if you go to my Substack, you can get all 14 chapters. I think there's maybe 15 chapters, and there's a huge glossary, which isn't available on Substack. And a big chunk of the wealth building part is what's missing in Genius. It's more focused on the biohacking, the details of the protocol, which are systematic and quite novel and unique. Well, since I'm talking about it, I'll just give you the biohack. Today, I'm just going to talk about vitamin E. And the reason for that, everybody knows about vitamin E. However, a lot of people don't. The reason I like to talk about vitamin E is I studied with some of the real leaders, real pioneers in what is now called biohacking. Dr. Michael Colgan is a big influence on me. He's a very prolific author and scientist, and he worked with Olympic athletes and racehorses. And then in the last couple of decades or so, just a few select nutraceutical companies and pharmaceutical companies and individually billionaires. And lots of interesting stories. We knew each other socially and professionally, and I studied with him. And I remember one night in a nice hotel called the Empress, and I think he's probably about 60 or so at this time, and spry and fit and testosterone through the roof. I can't remember if we went out dancing before or after dinner. And he's from New Zealand, so over a bottle of nice wine, and he had wild salmon, I still remember, and this is on the West Coast. And but I remember about that beautiful evening is we were talking about vitamin E, and he said, just something that stuck with me. He said, you can get a synthetic form of vitamin E. It's way cheaper, and for a lot of doctors, they'll say vitamin E, it's all the same molecular structure. But the natural form of vitamin E, that's from plants, so the alpha tocopherol form of vitamin E is quite a bit more expensive. But because it's naturally derived from plants, the shape of the molecule, it corkscrews in a certain direction. And I remember this because Michael Colgan told the story while he was uncorking a bottle of red wine, right? And so I was thought about, the molecule is shaped like a corkscrew. And that's where the analogy breaks down, because like a fitting, right? It's threaded, you screw it in and it fits, and if you screw it in the right way, it fits and it's tight. While the synthetic form, it's like the cross-threaded, essentially. So the cellular walls, where vitamin E is a big part of the makeup of your cellular walls, its makeup is such that the natural form fits perfectly and it creates a seal. The synthetic form, it's like trying to screw a bolt in the wrong way, and it creates damage and it creates leaky cells. And you just stuck in my mind. And so the form of things is the point being, this is a fairly simple, this isn't one of the other ones I talk about that have an instantaneous impact that you feel within minutes or hours, right? Like I've talked about, I usually talk about those, but this is a good sort of little, lock in the brain. And just remember that form matters with biohacking, not all the same. And I'm not a proponent of any particular brand or sponsored by any brand yet. If that ever changes, I'll let you know. And so that's the biohack tip for today. And I'm not a doctor. I'm not a lawyer. Sometimes I talk about I might today. And I'm not a lawyer. I'm not a financial advisor. This is not financial advice. Do your own research. This is not a security. Okay. All the disclaimers out. And another thing today, the hearings, the confirmation of the next Federal Reserve Chairman, Mr. Warsh. If you watched any of that, I put a key clip. I think I caught it on a key clip on my phone that is talking about the impact of AI on the economy. And he and Musk and said, this is an unknown multiplier. The government around the world are going to have to change their KPIs. And I have a whole on this. I think I might have just only published some of the formulas, not the whole economic theory. I think, and I'm not going to put it in my book because apparently when you put mathematical formulas in books, the sales dissipate. So I'll put that on a math wiki or something somewhere. But I think that we're going to have to measure output and we're going to have to measure jobs differently, just like when there's a transition from to true, real, literal horsepower, horses being sort of, we had machines already, but horse was still the standard, right? How many horse did you have? And there were weak horses and strong horses and big horses and little horses, but still sort of a unit. A horse is a measure of force, right? And along come automobile engines, mechanical engines, and how are you going to explain that and relate that? So that's kind of like a VisiCalc moment, right? As well, in a way, not really, but it was like, how do you? But it is in a way because it's a lot of new innovation has to do with cognitive dissonance and how people comprehend this new change, which is what people are going through, massive cognitive dissonance right now with everything in motion. But anyway, the output of automobile engines was measured in horsepower, right? Because it was a cognitive bridge for people to link how this engine could do. So I think that we might see companies, it used to always be how many FTEs do you have? I see a new metric called FETP, which is a measure of output based on the equivalent of a human, right? So right now, I would say we're at, with this project, not quite 20 FTEPs, I would say. Other companies, they may have 20 people, but their FTEP might only be gone up by 5. So a company of 20 people might only have 25 FTEP. And why 25 and not 20? Because they're efficient and they're using technology and they're using some AI to help maybe write some letters or something. Another company that has a huge call center might be able to and increase their efficiency. And that should be something that we want. We should stop being concerned about this is controversial. This was something that Warsh was asked about as well. And this isn't his idea, but this FTEP thing, that's my own original idea. Some people are talking about measuring it in terms of measuring output in terms of energy consumption. I think that's a bit too abstract. It'd be like not as clean a cognitive bridge is as horse to horsepower, right? Horse as horses to automobile engines. I think that FTEP, it's like relates to how this company is equivalent to a 100-person company or a 10-person company, or of course, a single individual will be able to about that. Love our pups. A single individual would be able to do 10. A single individual would be a 10 FTEP. So brings along a whole thing that I haven't talked about any of these about on X or anywhere yet, but I write about it as a concept called the ZPE, and others have talked about they just use a different acronym or whatever, but I talk about ZPE, the zero person enterprise. Some people, but it was something that I started thinking about when I created my first intelligence 20 years ago. I just always say 20 years. Wikipedia probably has a much better sense of the chronology of the things that I've done in my life. That's a good place if you're not familiar with my work. Wikipedia did a pretty good job, but according to Wikipedia, the only Ronald Ingram in the world is a deceased professional hockey player. So back the confirmation hearing of Warsh has 30 crypto in his own wallet. Handled the critics really well, and with grace and intellect, and talked about AI. And also, he didn't say the singularity, but he used a different word. But the singularity isn't a word that's in the common lexicon yet. It should be. Got on my shelf behind me you'll see if you turn that book around, you'll see it's full of tabs. I bought it when it came out. 2005. It's called The Singularity is Near by Ray Kurzweil. And so I did a little bit of played with the graphic a little bit and said the singularity is here, right? Because is here now. And he predicted, and people thought it was outrageous when he predicted it, that what he described as the singularity would happen in 2045. So we're 20 years ahead of the Kurzweil, the period that Kurzweil thought it would take for us to achieve the singularity. So what the singularity needs is Spock to grease the wheels, to fuel the agentic economy. And what are some practical ways of that this looks like machine-to-machine commerce? Well, imagine just provision a wallet for your AI with an MBC20 token, and you might give your task. One of these days you might give your autonomous agent, if you have one yet, and not that many people do. Building that is, I have OpenClaw, of course, and I'm building actually something. OpenClaw lacks the security that I require for projects that I'm working on and proposing to different agencies. And I'm working on something that is more resilient, more robust, and more secure without any doors to China, right? And that kind of thing. So you really need to be aware of the AI that you use on a day-to-day basis too. I'm not going to go down that path though today, but I mean, it's starting to, I bet everyone listening is using a lot of AI, and it has an effect on your consciousness, right? It's going to have to be warning labels like they used to have on cigarettes, I think. And you really want a foreign adversary to be deep inside your head, because that's like the aptly named DeepSeek. Use that AI, it's getting deep in your head. And it's not like TikTok where you're getting a few clips, right? And it's and people are using AI for so much, and that we're just in the early days still with that whole thing. But back to Spock and how it works. So need explainable decisions, right? They can't turn down a loan because the AI told them to. It has to be explainable. So the Ingram Evaluation Matrix has a simple model, but it's very robust and scalable. It can handle a $100 million merger and acquisition transaction in depth within its framework through the 4 categories and the infinite number of subcategories. 49 are the standard out of the box for financial services. We've got 49 subcategories that cover under each one of those 4 categories, all things different related to the 4 categories: strategic fit, feasibility, financial impact, and risk. And so the AI can do great, it has great resources and speed, but it has to be able to audit decisions, explain them at the moment and later and after the fact, to be auditable, manageable, explainable. And so by AIs, their decision, according to these 4 robust categories and subcategories, so you can double click, and if you needed to and something didn't quite add up, you could double click and see, and you can make adjustments, interact. And management is something that's so lacking in many systems. You need to have policies, but policies aren't laws. Policies are are and there's exception to policies, or there should be, and otherwise you make stupid decisions, right? And I just, as an autodidact, I often find myself outside of boxes, not being able, like I don't see a box for futurists who own banks. We're all unique and we're all outliers, and that's what the book Genius is about. Is everyone is a genius. Everyone, like, this is actually a word to describe you are. Right? What is your genius? Because everyone has one. It is sort of like your soul, if you will, is the way in Rome and in Latin it was considered to be. That was sort of another name, a word to describe your essence, right? So it has the meaning of exceptional intelligence, and I'll explain how in the different ways that intelligence is measured. The one way with IQ is basically based on speed. It's like how fast a mouse can run through a maze, right? And somebody with a really high IQ can run through this maze really fast. With metacognition, which is a different, and AI, that with metacognition is actually steps out of the labyrinth and looks across and says, hey, I smell some cheese over in that direction. I'm just going to skip across the top, and gets there in 1/10 of the time, right? And it's just like looking. Metacognition allows you to solve solutions that others can't see because they're following the textbook. If you and rote memory versus inspired memory, and so the age of AI is perfect. So this is a perfect way for them to, because they already learned in a top down, and now that's just accelerated. So you could do a deep dive and learn about a whole subject because it interests you, rather than to learn about something you're not even sure if you're going to care about. You have to learn the basics of math before you can do mechanics, and quantum mechanics might really interest you, but you'd have to go through so much or useless information, or information that have sped through, information that is taught to you by rote. Is the teachers are teaching it by rote, and they don't even understand why it's important or where it comes from. History and context matters. That's why I study etymology as well. It's really interesting. Like, there's no need to learn a whole bunch. I'm not a polyglot. I don't speak many languages, but you start to speak many languages if you start to speak English very well, because so many of the words in the English language come from different places. But I am digressing. So big thing that so with anything else from the Warsh confirmation, I just say is very exciting. He gets it. Great pick. He's a man of this is a time such as this needs a man like him. That for sure. So I think cover the main thing. Conference is really exciting, and I've been with all the development that I've been doing. Have also the conference on May 5th, and we actually might still be able to. This isn't a pitch for it's because I don't know if it's targeted for banks and bankers, but the innovative bankers that want to learn. So Bankers Institute, I'm a faculty member of. We have Tim's the head of the Senate committee, who is the one leading the committee that was. So if you watch that, you see Tim Scott chairing that meeting. So he and staffer Colin Carr, they're going to be talking about all these things that are relevant, and a lot of it that is relevant. Chair of this conference. I see the agenda, and it more relevant than I expected it to be when I first conceived it several months ago. Now with machine, that'll be a topic, explainable agentic commerce. It's a great Spock, and Spock is great for the world. For moment, and if you're lucky enough to be hearing about this at the very still edges, and still immense, and you'll see the sort of that have been. We're past where most fail, which in the first day, right? 99% fail in the first day. So part of the 1% for sure, going past 21 days now, and stronger all the time. And as you'll see, I'm the hype guy. And so in fact, I tend to hold things I think some folks would like me to release information more quickly, but I think I can start to do that. I got my next call, I'll talk about some of the really wild stuff, because this is already wild enough, right? What we're talking about, something that could be a utility token that has, because of its utility for machines, could go viral, not just for humans. And we know how that goes. We've seen that before, which is pretty cool, but 10 times faster, because machines get it, word propagates 10, 100 times faster. And we've never seen a beneficent machine. They've always been malevolent viruses, right? That are trying to suppress and stop. What happens when you get one that is good, that makes people's lives easier, that industry and institutions and government welcome the competitive edge that it brings to America, and for the GDP multiplier effect, for the innovation, for the genius amplification of this country. Why would it's like, see, once you get it, and I think many of you are, exciting, no hype. It's just, we can see what's happening, and to ride that wave and not be crushed by it. That's what we're doing. That's catching wave. I wouldn't even say we've caught it yet. We're at that break where the waves are in, and we see that, we hear a roar in the horizon. It's like, whoa, it's a really big one. We better have that longboard ready, because this is going to be a wild ride. So, and great when you're on it and not getting crushed by it. I'm excited, because I'm genuinely excited, because too far ahead. And this time now, because Singularity speed, we're just a pitch ahead, which is the perfect place to be. So I talk about the score aspect, which is super exciting. That's another way that tokens are burned for utility. And the thing is that banks, so when they use the IEM evaluation matrix for getting a explainable decision on a loan file, let's say, when they use that, the of ping, think of it like a credit bureau. It's not it's in a different class. It's not a credit bureau. I'm just going to call it the not credit bureau, maybe, because so you can understand what it does, but that it's completely different. It's a way of, and how's it so much different? Because credit bureau look at history, and they look at ability to pay to some degree, not well, but that's if they a little bit of that, but they have no way of measuring willingness to pay, which is whether someone is rich or poor. If they're unwilling to pay, in fact, if they're rich, it's hard to get them to buy a contract. I've discovered then most people just, if hey, they've made a deal, they have a contract, they'll honor it, right? And but you go to great lengths to have a agreement, but if you're dealing with a devious group of people, you care about the agreement. They'll just do whatever they want anyway. Not that I have any experience with that. Pay. So the character of a person is going to be more and transparency, but on your terms, right? So not Big Brother monitoring you, but you decide what information you want to share, and you can take that information with you from one country to another, whereas right now you can't. Even you have a file at Experian. If you move from London to New York and have a great paying job, you have to prepay for your phone just like everybody else, and you might have a hard time paying rent. You might, unless your employer pays it for you, because you have a credit score. Or poor, people mobile that are crossing borders, that have international business, have one score that is yours, that follows you go, and that you can see when things change in your file and catch it. It actually saves everybody money. It saves it's so easy. The administration costs are a lot less if you as a user see that I didn't authorize that transaction, and you can do something about it. And they're facilitated with this patented, and I want to be clear, this is an issued patent. This is not a provisional patent. This was a patent that's been, I just checked the number, it's actually up to 167 citations by all credit bureaus. I can say that, actually, all of them, and FICO. Many large companies like Google, Square, any company of the largest companies that are involved in fintech and payment, which is I've opened over 10 million accounts over the last 20 years or so. Projects that have in mobile wallets, generally mobile banking applications. For starting in my career as an entrepreneur, which is what I call a product president, vice president, whatever. Product people are the entrepreneurs, and then always looking more quickly led me out of banking, being an entrepreneur in banking and financial institutions, to having my own fintech companies, my own card companies, mobile wallet, mobile payment companies. Then still not moving quickly enough, so I had to get vertically integrated with my bank. Well, and also didn't work out. There's right. Then the next level of impediment is regulation. So if you're a guy, you're probably like, oh man, the darn bank, my bank partner is holding me back. And your bank partner tells you, like they would tell us, like, no, Ron, ours are tied, right? Like we have that regulation. I didn't believe them, right? But then as a bank owner, I discovered that they were honest with me. And it's so difficult to navigate, and it doesn't need to be that way. That's why I'm having a conference and to support this project, Spock, right? Because there's no, do you want Brian Armstrong to be the only guy that speaks for crypto in DC? I could be in it right now. We have financial institutions, fintech, big, large and small financial institutions, and I'm advocating for a level playing field for them as well. Because people, when they say banks, well, there are 5 different kinds of charters, right? They're credit, there are state regional banks. There are the large banks. There's specialty banks, different types of banks, right? And your community banks in particular, they love you. They want generally, right? And it's been that DeFi, really, in a way, right? There's no other country that has this network of all these many numerous financial, it should be, was a source of strength for the whole economic system, as well as a source of fun for innovation. Now limited what they could do, but there was a time when a bank could fund things that are funded by VCs and these days, right? And anyway, I've written on this topic well, but there's a lot to be understood, and there's a lot of capacity that could be just liberated in this country that would make that huge multiplier effect on the economy. So we've talked about all of these things that could be hugely impactful for the country. One of them is creating things which will be fueled. Spock is designed for this new wave of machine commerce. Some of them would come from reducing regulation, streamlining, right-sizing regulation, so that banks can do most banks to do, and they're also sometimes by it's called, and the Community Reinvestment Act. That's something that will come up in this a national bank. They could do business everywhere, right? And because it's actually with technology now, a first fintechs like say Green Dot bought Green Dot and Blue made that successful, and they only needed one branch. So there's been a number of other because everything was right. So a community bank can level up big time with technology. That's something I say. Don't think you're small. Like, this is the David and Goliath situation. In fact, it's a Goliath situation. It's like Goliath is like is wearing iron, right, and has a blunt bludgeon instead of a sword, and no arrows, right, and no army behind him, right? These are like bigger, the harder they fall. Like, there are, I know, and we too big to. I mean, like I said, original banking, and there was only one bank regulator back then, the OCC, established by Abraham Lincoln, and that was the only bank regulator. And they had a huge network of. They needed regulation. There was too many. There needed some standardization in rules, which is true. But rules, lightweight, business friendly, and then if they're business friendly and then friendly, and if you stop forcing banks to do it, banks will have to compete with each other. And if there are some bad actors out there, they'll shake out. And the good, fair banks that have good, fair pricing, will ones that are tech savvy will have a big advantage. So I'm trying to help all of the Institute is the largest educational platform in America for bankers. Them get the tools to level up so that they don't need to be afraid of the Clarity Act and the Genius Act and they do need to be freed, because the fintechs and Kraken just charter, and Coinbase is looking for a charter, and fintechs have been more and more that are going to be getting charters or have partnered acquired banks. But the banks are at this disadvantage because they have 165,000 pages of regulations, the same number of pages of regulations that a large bank has, no less. And proportionately, a proportion of their costs, anyway, last thing I think that there's a thing, right? It's not like banks are good or banks are bad, right? They serve purpose, and if it's good for the economy, and could really have an amplification effect on the economy, not with even if interest rates stayed the same, just by reducing the regulation. So enough on that. But this conference is a big deal, right, for Spock and for anybody that is interested in Spock. And so join the community, and we'll end minutes early, and leave comments, questions. I also, if you want me to ask regulators or Tim Scott or who's going to speaking there, who's a senior on the committee as well, with Scott, with Tim. I've got poll that me to ask and as well. And get engaged. This is really big this is an exciting time for innovators and creators, and for the people that the pioneers in crypto, whether they meme coins are here for the evolution that goes beyond meme coins to include utility coins, and here to watch the meme coin space get cleaned up, and with more diversity of projects, more real utility projects. So I will begin at 6 o'clock, day after next. So every second day or so, I do one. So thanks, everyone. Live long and prosper.